Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own track that you would like to submit for special selections, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's is coming at us from Birdle, however, there is no context to this one. So we're just going to dive right into the track itself, which is Where Hope and Daylight Die by the band Summoning. Let's see what they're bringing to the table today. Yeah, a little bit of an extended drum solo here. Oh. Yeah, so really fun accented shifts. Yeah, so we get the spacious downbeats and then two downbeats back to back into an offbeat. Plus, yeah, all the tom rolls within there as well. Just a really nice drum pattern. Okay, not quite as big as I was expecting. Very wide production on the drums. Almost has an electronic feeling to the drums. Yeah, and this there's a nice little like groove to the velocities coming off of our guitar. Pure brass right here. Okay. Yeah, so we're reutilizing the brass section we just had with the rising string idea from the intro, and a simplified version of our intro's drum idea. Really bringing a lot of this conceptually together. Oh man, that highly compressed chugging just it brings in all the intensity. I wish the production allowed it to explode. We've got everything though, don't we? Okay, yeah, so we have this string section rather than the rising concepts. But we've still got the brass back there. Yeah, playing around with off beats and the strings, syncopated ideas. No, okay. Oh, we're gonna fade out on this instead. Oh, the song's over. Yeah, moving to another idea would not make any sense. Man, I'm conflicted on this. What is this? That's my first question because I see that there's, I don't know if anybody else is in this, just happens to be here. The top suggested video is a cover of this from Midnight Odyssey, and I really want to listen to it now. I don't know who Midnight Odyssey is, but the thing is, I'm coming away from this enjoying what's on the paper, wishing the performance were different. And it's not necessarily anything against the musicians either. I think it's technically performed well, but it's got a blackened production to it that I think works against what it's aiming for, and man. And see, that's where my confliction comes from. Confliction, is that a word? Confliction. I don't know. That's where my conflict comes from though. Is that I really think that this could shine if it didn't go for that lo-fi vibe. And I say shine subjectively. It would shine for me. Objectively, it would be a very different song. You change the production, the sound, the quality of it, maybe even the instrumentation of it. You get a very different song, a different arrangement of it that wouldn't be Summonings Where Hope and Daylight Die. And maybe as we dig into some of the lyrics, we'll find some thematic appropriateness for the limited fidelic range. That's another word I just made up. I'm over here coining words all day. Uh, So let's talk about what it's doing. I think that's the most important part. And then we'll talk about why I think it needs to be cleaner. Or not cleaner, clearer. Higher fidelity. We'll get into that. I think it's necessary to understand what they're doing and how that would drive a larger sound sphere out of this. Uh, and why I think that this lo-fi vibe hinders what it's trying to achieve musically. But first, we got to know what's happening musically. So we start off, and I really love this drum idea. So it's not too complex, but it has some nice ornamentation in it that helps drive it in a way that feels entirely kinetic and potential at the same time. So a lot of it is a lot of really strong accents on downbeats. We get that da 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 da. And so we have these moments of just really strong hits. However, within that, there is one or two of these really nice tom rolls that sit between them that push the energy forward. Rather than the static eighth notes, we have this pocket of 16th notes that helps provide a little bit of momentum within it. After we do a couple of those, we hit the end, the latter half of this drum pattern, where we shift from downbeats to offbeats. Once again, putting electricity and momentum into the drum pattern, showcasing that it's not just existing where it's at, it is ready to progress, to move forward, that it's driving towards an idea. We also have a lot of darkness in our snare and toms. There is not a lot of brightness or cracks or anything like that coming out of these. They're EQ'd or maybe even pitched a little lower than usual to bring in a lower timbre to it, while also incorporating just this nice warm roundness for their tone that, at least to me, sounds a bit darker than other toms and snares I've heard. Could be an EQ thing, could be an instrument thing. And what I mean by darkness and brightness, it's something really difficult to put into words. It's easier to take like a brass trumpet and a silver trumpet and have them play the same note and then be like, this one's brighter and that one's darker. And then you just kind of figure out what it means to you. It's really difficult to put into words, like quantifiable information about brightness and darkness of an instrument, but it has to do with their timbre, with the tone of the instrument. You can have a dozen instruments all play a concert B flat, and they would all feel different outside of their core timbre differences. I suppose it makes more sense. You can get 12 different trumpets, 12 different toms, 12 different tubas, 12 different violins, and depending on the material that everything's made out of, they can produce different feelings for their instrumental characteristics. And here, the toms and snare have a bit of darkness to them, and not as bright as other drum kits that I've heard. However, that doesn't mean that this percussion section is devoid of brightness. We have a very chipper tambourine, possibly on. I'm going to assume that it's on a pedal. Maybe it's on the hi-hat pedal. I don't know. But it's just constant. Every beat, we have this really nice shimmer to it. It adds a bit of, like I said, brightness to this overall dark and moody drum and, snare and tom idea. We eventually add strings over it, which I think was beautiful. Absolutely love this moment. It is a fantastic way to start this track off. And it showcases our beginning idea, the bum, 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 bum. And I'm not a singer. Those are the wrong pitches. You get the idea. We have 4 rising notes and then return. And that's the loop. And it's a chord. Every instrument in the string section is playing a different note. We get nice, really strong chords out of it. I don't know if there's 3, 4, 5 chords. Or 5 note chords. We're just going to call them chords. And it has a really nice progression in it that also has a reset in it. It isn't a nice reset. We rise and then we immediately fall to rise again. There is elements of repetition, of a Sisyphean task kind of put into there, where no matter how much effort we get into rising to the top, we will always return back down to the bottom immediately. Also, it's not a smooth up and a smooth down, where it's kind of giving us a wave. It's a rise and then back to the beginning. And then we go from this. I think we add the vocals here, which interestingly didn't start off in the style that we would hear for the rest of the track. We started off in a more chest style of vocals, a bit higher in pitch, but not quite the operatic feel that we would get into. It feels more of a comfortable rock style or pop style of singing. And we do a bar, maybe 2 bars in here, and move up into the operatic head voice. What I think is very interesting here is we kind of had this 1, 2, 1, 2, and I figured we were going to come back down and have this alternation between the two, and we never came back down to that chest voice at all through the song. I'm really curious why we started in it at all. It's an interesting decision, that's for sure. But it's literally used extremely sparsely for just a couple of bars and never touched on. Again, we continue to use the operatic vocals for the remainder of the track. It's an interesting decision to add them at all, and I'm sure that there's a purpose to it that I didn't quite pick up, but maybe they have a reason for doing so. And that is our intro, our verse, if you will. Our intro bleeds into our verse. It's important to remember these ideas. The rising chords in our string and the drum pattern that has elements of laying down the time signature as well as driving components to it. These two ideas are going to pop up so often throughout this track. We move into the chorus and we have a little bit of a pre-chorus that takes us into this. The first time we have a drum roll, snare roll maybe, plus eighth notes on the guitar. And we have an increase in volume on this as well. It's a really nice way of building intensity into the next section. That intensity is not met though. We go into the next section and I feel like it's just drops down maybe a little bit, just stays exactly where it is. Maybe it's just what I expect, I guess, modern mainstream expectations. But when you have this rising energy into a chorus, I'm expecting something bombastic. We were at a 5, we're going to drop down to a 2 for our crescendo. We're going to rise up to a 7 and then land on an 8 when we hit the downbeat of the chorus. It's this natural progression of energy transferring from the potential energy into the kinetic, showcasing rising intensity and delivering on that tension into a very strong resolution. We don't really get that here. We have sitting at the 5, we have dropping down, we have the crescendo, and then we don't get the bump. I'm not quite sure if we just level out at the top of our crescendo or if it actually does come down a little bit, but either way, it never feels like it has the impact that it's aiming for, or conversely, that I'm expecting. And at least for me, it's a bit of a shame, a bit of a letdown. I'm going to hang on to this idea though, we'll talk about it later. In our chorus, we bring in guitars. Well, I mean, we already brought them in there in our pre-chorus. They took us here, so they're going to continue playing. We're mostly getting eighth note ideas out of there. I think in the second chorus, we end up getting chords. Maybe it's the final chorus. We end up getting chords out of them instead of the eighth note idea. And our strings have shifted to a new concept, more melodic. I don't remember exactly. It's moving notes, like quarter notes, and they have a flow to them. I don't remember exactly what the melody is, but it sits juxtaposed to our vocal melody in this section, and eventually the vocals cut away, and we get the just the strings up there. I don't think the brass are present yet, but we do bring in brass on the second chorus, and they are basically just doing these really long held out notes that provide foundational aspects from the top end. They're actually placed fairly high up in the mix, but quiet. So it's not like they're high up in the mix. They're not given prominence through volume. they're just given prominence through placement. They are placed literally above the band. Um, it's really interesting because it makes them feel separated from everything else, but not in a way that draws attention to them. I think it's a really neat way to go about doing that. I'm interested to get into the lyrics here and see what this song might be about. But just from the title, Where Hope and Daylight Die, to me it kind of feels like the little piece of daylight still creeping through while the dark clouds, begin to surround it. They're sitting up there being themselves, but slowly being taken over. They don't have the volume to sit on top of the band, to take the spotlight, but they're still fighting. They're still up there. Um, and then the drums just sort of continue on with a variation of that moving idea, kind of taking away all the ornamentation and providing something a bit more just sitting in the pocket, laying down the groove, and which makes sense because we have so many more elements here that the reduction of the complexity of the drums makes sense. We're trying to remove things that are being played to create more space for all the other instruments that are coming in. And we bounce back and forth between these. The chorus, the second chorus, like I said, there is a variation on it. We have the brass in here, and we don't have the drum roll leading up to it, though we still have the eighth notes on the guitar leading into our chorus. But other than that, as far as I remember, the chorus and the chorus and the verse are the same on this repetition. Then we get into the bridge, which is my favorite part of the track. I pointed out specifically the drums are from this section, the strings are from this section, the brass are from this section, the guitars are from this section. I think it's really neat how we've already seen a little bit of variation. We changed up our pre-chorus into our second chorus. We changed up some of the instruments in our verse. We changed up a couple of the instruments in our second chorus. There is this natural progression through the track. But here I think is a culmination of bringing things together. We are mixing our intro or our verse lines from some of our instruments with our chorus lines for other instruments. And we begin to see this bleed over a little bit into our final chorus. And I just think it's really neat. I've talked about this a few times in the past. When you're making new sections of a song, you don't necessarily need to write completely new material. Just simply copying and pasting one idea into a new section recontextualizes it. It has new chords that it's played against, new textures that it's played against, new melodies that it's played against, and it can feel like something new even though you've simply copy pasted it. You can also give it to a different instrument, which is going to change the timbre on it. And you can also modulate it in small ways, like reversing it, where you play the notes backwards, or inverting it, where you flip the notes upside down. So instead of rising up, it might start high and fall down. And you can mix all of this together. You can invert it and reverse it and give it to a new instrument against an entirely different set of sounds. There's just lots of ways to reuse things you've already written as a way to work smarter, not harder, because not only do you not have to write something brand new, which is really nifty, especially if you're hitting writer's block, but it also ties it together. So when people dig into your music, they're going to be like, oh, snap, they had this brilliant idea of just reutilizing this in this other section, which kind of ties it back and makes this section feel like an adaptation of this section. So the themes here are tied back to the themes here. So it makes your music seem deeper if you're trying to go for something on that angle. But for the casual listener, it's going to feel more connected. They might not even know why it's more connected, but the sections are going to feel more whole, and it's going to feel like a larger piece of music rather than a series. This is the verse, this is the chorus, this is the bridge. I can feel out all these sections individually. It's going to help tie everything together. So there's a lot of reasons to reuse licks or ideas or patterns that you've done before. And here, I really like how we're sort of mixing and matching ideas and creating new amalgamations of sections. Like the first time we get into the bridge, it feels more like the verse than the chorus, but there's a hint of the chorus in there. And moving out of it, the last section before we move back into the chorus is mostly the chorus idea with a little bit of, I think it was the drumming from the verse. And it's just really neat to hear these, mix and matched sections. And they didn't have to write anything new. They just had to combine the things they already did. And so not only is it a new section, these are sounds that we haven't heard yet. But I'm kind of piecing these back. Oh, this is cool. It's like a I don't know, an a la carte version of the song. We built one section, we built another. Now you can just pick and choose the pieces that you want. And I think it's really cool to hear that, especially in this context. We have a few instruments, and they all sort of have dual roles. Some, like our strings, have a melody piece and a foundational piece. Our guitars have a melody and a chordal piece, and you can kind of choose, which one. Well, I want the guitars to do chord here, but I don't want them to do chords next. And then I want the strings to do the melody here, but next section we're gonna have them do, chords or whatever. And it's just really neat to hear how all of it can just fall into place so effortlessly. I just wish we could hear more of that in a metal context like this. Like I said, we move into the final chorus though, and there isn't anything that really changes there, so I don't really have much to add. But the bridge, like I said, is to me where everything shines. It's the big payoff. They put all the time into ensuring that all their puzzle pieces fit in any configuration, and now we're getting to hear we get to reap the rewards of that work that they put in, assuring that they could do this. So altogether, it ends up feeling like a metal track with operatic aspirations. And the operatic classical side is the dominant one. The vocals are prominent in both the mix and the volume. That's kind of the same thing, but they sit above the band in placement and they sit above the band in volume. They are designed to be the spotlight element. Whenever you listen to them and the vocals come up, that's what the song wants you to listen to. The trumpet, the brass as a whole, has a nice foundational line that sits above the band, and our strings have moving ideas as well as chordal ones. The guitars sort of always sit on the bottom end. They don't really take any moment to steal the spotlight. And while the drums are a metal aspect and do have prominence, in fact, I stated the opening of it has a lot of movement that is required to set up the direction and momentum of the track, it's not really relegated to metal. In fact, the segregation in the separation between the cymbals on the tambourine, I'm going to kind of put those both in the same pocket over here, against the snare and the bass kick kind of resembles the percussion section of an orchestra, where you'll have a snare player and a bass drum player and somebody on auxiliary percussion with cymbals and timpanis and whatever over there. Not that there's timpanis in here. What is it? Tambourine. That's the T one I was going for. Even the tom runs could easily be arranged for a timpani. And what I'm trying to say about this is that while it is one person on a drum kit, the drums themselves feel more orchestral than they do rock or metal. At least that opening idea. The chorus kind of falls a little bit closer to the rock side, but I mean, we hear, at least to my ears, a lot more of that orchestral style of playing, the classical style of playing from our intro and our verse. That appears to me more often. So, what my ears hear while listening to this is a small orchestra primarily comprised of brass, strings, and percussion, no woodwinds, and a guitar. And that is very different from what I think they're aiming for, which is a metal band with classical elements in it. This feels like the opposite. This feels like an orchestra that happens to have a guitarist in it. So, being that it's, to my ears, written like that, production wise, compositionally, not necessarily production wise, all over the place, but the way that instruments are layered, what gets prominent roles, that kind of stuff. It feels like the metal element is secondary. Compositionally, the metal element is secondary. So I find it odd that they would pair all this with a metal production primarily. So much of this screams wide soundscape, spacing between instrumentation, clarity in tone. There really could have been some fascinating stuff being heard here, especially in our larger chords from our string and brass section, that would have played very well against the operatic singing, where the guitar could have been a texture underneath everything to give it that extra bite, rather than feeling like it's the only thing that fits with the production, but not really doing much for the song. Um, and I don't know. Again, maybe it just might be my personal bias. I hear all these instruments. I'm used to having a clean production with all of them, but there is just something missing in this track, and it's power, it's oomph, it's width, it's that little bit of extra spice to give it weight. It feels narrow production wise, but the music is screaming that this is big and booming. And I'm getting a real schism there between what the production is telling me this sounds like and what the music is telling me it's supposed to sound like. It's like if you've ever listened to an album, you've listened to it a million times, you absolutely love it, and you listen to it on, high fidelity equipment. And then one day you hear that song on the radio, and yeah, I mean, it's the same song, but like some of the characteristics of the tone and the colors of the chords, they're just not right because you're listening to it on like a car radio, and the radio broadcast is already being compressed a little bit, and the equipment in your car just isn't up to snuff anyways, so you have a lower quality audio source and lower quality hardware, and it's just a pale imitation. And that's what I'm getting here. Even though I've never heard a higher fidelity version of this, the instruments themselves are, my brain is interpreting them in a higher quality, higher fidelity production. That's what it's expecting to hear, and it's kind of emulating it. It takes what I'm hearing here and translates it into something that sounds more traditionally orchestral, and that version in my head sounds phenomenal. And so I'm comparing this made up version that my brain created with what I'm hearing here, and the big difference is just that production. It makes it feel like it's blackened orchestral. And I don't like blackened orchestral apparently. And I think I'm just going to leave that there, but yeah, that's just where I'm at here. There's some really cool musical things happening, but a lot of the neat nuances have been removed because of the compression and distortion. And it's just a bit of a shame because there really is some beautiful music underneath here that you can hear 90% of, but I think the really cool 10% is taken out to make it feel more metal, and all it did to me was make it feel flatter. So let's dive into some lyrics. um, Stay here while I wake and think of you. I see you far away. Answer my call. Can you hear my voice? I hear you. For we are gone and forever lost. Broken here I lie beneath the shadows sink where daylight dies. I wake for you. Oh, I said stay here. I wake and think of you. And it says still here. I wake and think of you. So this person is somewhere far displaced from this other person that they're thinking about. And they can see them. Say, can you hear me? Because I can hear you. Forever we are gone. No, for we are gone and forever lost. Broken here I lie. Beneath the shadows sink where daylight dies. I wake for you. So yeah, there's definitely a large separation between these two. I don't know if it's an exaggeration that says that they're forever lost, or maybe they truly are. This could have a supernatural edge where maybe they are in an afterlife of sorts, or maybe it is something a bit more physical, where uh, maybe there's been a falling out of their friendship, of their relationship. It says, it's forever lost, right? It can't be obtained again. They're not separated by distance because someone had to move or something like that. But it's one person broke it off. And now they sit in darkness. They lie here broken where daylight dies. Yeah, there's definitely something a bit emo about this. Um, Not as a dig. We just, for those who weren't here last week, we did emo week last week, so I thought it's just kind of appropriate to bring back up. Um, but yeah, there's definitely sorrow in this. There's a distance between our narrator and the person that they think about a lot and wish they could speak to again. And that distance is blocking communication, and they don't see any future where this distance is removed. They are forever lost, so they're going to sulk here in their despair. In better lands the sun may shine, and green leaves on trees spring, they're opening and blossoming, but here the ravens sing. So, yeah, maybe somewhere else things would be better, but here they're not. But still I stand and think of days when grass was green and my heart was so young that I've never been past forever lost. So yeah, kind of tying back into the idea of green things being bright and hopeful, says that, maybe if we had taken a different path, this distance would not be here. We might still be friends, or, our relationship might still be strong. There might still be a connection between us, but there's not. And, I still think about those days when that distance wasn't here. And that's it. It's just a longing to be with somebody who they cannot anymore. All right. Trying to tie that back into themes in the music, and other than just the dark and dreary, well, not the dreary, dark drumming, the drum tones, with that little bit of brightness. I mean that kind of fits. That kind of fits. Being stuck in a dark land where darkness dies and watching the dark. Did we still have the tambourine at the end of the track? Did that get lost along the way? That would be cool. Our brass didn't. They were kind of bright, and like I said, they were the highest pitch stuff here as well. They retained through to the end as well. I don't know. I don't really see any strong relationship here, which is not a bad thing. Not every music needs to be a completely 100%, perfectly meshed work of lyrics and music. Sometimes they're just created separately. The band makes the music, the singer wants to sing about something specific, they write lyrics for it, bam, you got a song. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Summoning Where Hope and Daylight Die. So conflicted on so much good composition. I just wish it was delivered in a format that worked better for my ears. I don't want to say it's a better format, it's just a different one that I'm more acclimated to listening to, that I doesn't bounce off of me as much. This is where you guys come in though. Hit me up with your thoughts on summonings where hope and daylight. I don't know. I repeated this. Let me know what you thought of it. Let me know if you agree with or disagree with me. Put that stuff down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box, and in there is a link for Linktree. Linktree? There we go. Has links for everything related to the channel. You can submit your own special selection tracks through here. You can pick up some merch. Follow me on Twitter. Join the Discord. Support the channel through Patreon, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Second time y'all are seeing that. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we'll continue on with Heavy Metal Origins Week and check out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.